you start holding your own against the fighters, and that stops being scary. And then coach is like, you want to fight? And now it's been a few years. You're very comfortable in it. That seems like a small next step. And then next thing you know, you're fighting and you have a few fights under your belt, and then you go pro. And it's a road that I got sucked down that I didn't. Yeah, I definitely didn't go into it with the intention of like trying to make a career out of it when I first started. It was just, I liked martial arts, and that's all it was.
Yeah. So when did you, obviously, how many pro fights did you have, Kev?
11.
So what was your record, if you don't mind me asking?
8-3.
8-3. That's not so bad.
No, the last couple guys that I fought were like I went up one weight class and I fought a kid named Askar, and he kicked the shit out of me.
Yeah.
It was a weight class up, and he got a UFC contract off of his win against me. And then the next kid that I fought was fresh out of the UFC, and that was another scrap. I ended up losing that one too. So, but yeah, so it just, I hit this threshold of kids that were like, there's what's one thing going pro. And then it's another thing when you start to get to the level where the kids are right around UFC level. That's
Sure.
when it gets scary.
Yeah, I mean, because it's the real deal. I mean, I can't imagine I don't know anything about it, but you're going into it, and some of these kids are legit maybe fighting for a different lifestyle, and they're coming in there with a different mentality of, like I have to kill this guy in the ring to be able to get to the next meal. I mean, maybe that's not everybody. And I'm not trying to speak out of turn here, but I would think that at some point in time, that's a real reality, especially like a guy that just got demoted, or maybe he lost his contract and he's got to work himself back into the UFC where the potential real money could be, whether he was ever going to get to that real money or not. It's like he's legit at that point fighting for his life or a lifestyle. I can imagine, right?
Yeah, and that mentality, you're right. It wasn't everybody. I stood in front of most pros, and the mentality was a little bit more like it was a competition.
Sure.
Which is intense, but it can be friendly. And, I only stood in front of two people that had the mentality that you're talking about, where it was like they were starving and I was standing in between them and their food. And that was a much different mentality. And it's an intense thing to be standing in front of somebody that's trained and scary and jacked and has that mentality where you can tell that if they could, they would kill you. They're trying to hurt you as much as possible. And that's sort of what everybody's trying to do. But there's a mentality difference in some of those kids.
Yeah, it's got to be a difference. So, I mean, and you I don't know if it's just a common term, but like you do say, so how old are you now?
35.
Oh, you're getting old when you have to fucking think. You're fucked, Kev.
Dude.
You are fucked, dude. Yeah. Just remember how old your wife is, and just always chip a couple notches back low.
27,
yeah.
easy.
Yeah, there you go, all day.
Yeah.
So the other thing, I mean, you're saying kids, and so I can imagine that's a real reality of, I was just looking at, I'm a huge Canelo fan, and that the Triple G Canelo fight's happening right now, the trilogy, and it's probably someone is going to win, and I'm rooting for my guy. We'll see what happens. But, I was just looking, and I think Canelo's 34, and I'm like, fuck, he's a baby. And like, I remember like growing up and watching him, and I didn't realize I was older than him. I was like, if he loses, he's got age against him. And I'm like, Adam started looking, I'm like, oh dude, he's a pup, and he's got 67 fights under his belt. He's 34 and he's in his fighting prime. And I'm like, that might be the case with boxing. And I'm not saying boxing is less or worse than MMA, but, I can't imagine the life expectancy of a career MMA fighter is beyond what, 30 on average?
No, I mean, it can last a little bit longer than that. And I think now you're starting to see people last a little bit longer because we have such like advances in how to train, how to recover, how to not get injured, all that shit, where
Sure.
people in the past were just like hitting it hard until they broke. And then when they broke, they retired. And now it's not so much like that. So
Yeah.
you are seeing people last kind of late into their 30s, but still it's a very like if I was making money, I could still fight for another couple of years if that's really what I wanted to do. But I'm still pretty old as a fighter.
Yeah.
Like, there's no one really in the MMA world that's lasting very much over 40. There's a couple people, but not a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, so you got those last two fights, both losses. You're getting into maybe an age bracket where, you were at the level, because you were fighting. What was that last organization you were fighting with? LFL or something?
No, I was fighting with the LFA and then Cage Warriors.
Cage Warriors. Okay. All right. I can remember. So, I mean, you got those things stacking against you. Maybe, I don't know if that's weighing on you mentally, but what was that like, that point? Was it the last fight that just you knew, or did you know, like after you finished it, when you were like, this is different. I don't want it. Like, this isn't, I don't need to chase this dream or this goal anymore. Like, I'm good. Like, was it that last fight that kind of pretty much nailed in the coffin?
No, it was always something that I was curious about, and I was like, all right, let me see what I can do with this. But I never had like a crazy drive to become the best in the world or to like beat the world or anything. It was always, I was doing martial arts more to figure myself out. Like, I wanted to be secure in myself in a way where I could stand in front of another scary man, half naked in front of a bunch of people, and not feel insecure about myself, or not get too scared, still handle myself bravely. All those things I was really trying to figure out about myself. As far as like, I mean, it would have been cool to make a bunch of money doing it, but that was never really the goal. It was all more just, like self-exploration.
Sure. Yeah, I can imagine. That's a brutal way to self-explore, to be honest with you, Kev.